Good deal. All right. Well, we're going to get started here. Had a little bit of pre-game festivities there with those of you who are able to join early. Um, yeah. So I think we'll just start jumping right in because there's actually quite a bit of stuff that we need to cover today. And I'm going to try to get it all wrapped up here in the 30-minute time frame for these workshops. So first thing to note, so last week we had it on Tuesdays, and we're going to go on Wednesdays moving forward. So Wednesdays, and then there is a time change, so it'll be at 9 PST. So that would be, what, noon over on the East Coast? And yeah, that's what we're going to be running with. And it'll be Stephen's Workshop Wednesdays or something like that, something cool. All right. Well, let's dig in and go over a little bit of the outline today. So, in the outline today, we have our homework from last week, which does anybody remember what the homework from last week was? Well, if for those of you who weren't here, I got a couple yeses and a So, homework from last week was write down your frequently asked questions. So that is correct. Create those frequently asked questions and get that ready. So if you're implementing that AI chatbot, you're able to already train it with some good quality information. So that was last week's homework. So this week we're going to be talking about reviews. Specifically, we're going to dive into a little bit about Google and then how those things can be generated. And we'll go over some questions and then kind of wrap it up from there. So, all right, let's get in. So the first thing is where do we find reviews helpful? And that's kind of an open question. So I want you to think about that for a minute as where do you see reviews and where is it that you see them that you're kind of like, hey, that's helpful. And I'll give you some of my thoughts here. So first one, let me see if this works. We got a Google. Somebody says Google, Facebook. We'll get to some of those. All right. So we have a website, or on the website, there's testimonials. And those serve a particular purpose. We will talk a little bit about those. We also have product reviews. So similar to, like, you'll see them on Amazon. I'm a big tool nut, so I go on Harbor Freight all the time and I look at reviews to see, okay, is that a good quality tool? Or what is people's experience with it? Of course, if you're a restaurant or a food service business, Yelp's a big one, or pretty much anybody in the service industry, Yelp ends up being a pretty big one. So we have Facebook, of course. They're the big juggernaut there of social media. And then we have Google. And so we'll talk a little bit about those and kind of why they matter. So, all right. Well, before I jump into Google reviews, I do want to touch on kind of the purpose behind each one of these reviews in these channels. So on a website, a lot of times you'll have people that come to a website and they don't know that website from any other business. So they're going to want to see that these people are legitimate. And so those testimonials or reviews, they give that website legitimacy. I already mentioned kind of like the Harbor Freight example, when you go and you look at tools and that sort of thing, or you look at any type of product. I mean, when's the last time you went on Amazon and you looked at something that had 400 reviews and most of them were bad and you're like, yep, I'm going to buy that. So we use those reviews as kind of filters. Same thing with restaurants. Restaurant I just was reading the other day. I was looking for a restaurant here in the local town, and there was a response from one of the business owners that was in response to a negative review, and the person was just being negative, and in reading the review there was no real purpose behind it. And the small business owner was like, hey, you know what, we rely heavily on these reviews. We'd appreciate the chance in order to make things right. And that sort of sentiment. So reviews are really important when it comes to those small businesses, particularly in those service industries. Of course, Facebook, you have relevancy, and the more reviews that you have, the more relevant that is. And then you have Google. And so we're going to jump into Google specifically and kind of why it's important on Google. Okay. And by the way, I am halfway monitoring the chat here. So as I'm going through, I do see that there's a lot of others, TripAdvisor, I mean, Houzz, there's all kinds of places that you can have reviews. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those and kind of how that plays into it. But let's get back to Google here, of why Google specifically is important. So with Google, it does those things that we already talked about, where it lends legitimacy to your business. And it's more legitimate than the testimonials on a website. So it's kind of like when people read things on a website, they know that you got to be really, a bad business owner and put poor reviews on your website. So you're going to only put the good ones on there. But on these other channels, there's not a filter that's on those. So you do have the ability of saying that that is more legitimate. Okay. And then you have the bottom one here, which is local SEO. And this one's kind of interesting. So there is some market research out there that's done by some of these third-party companies. In this case, I went to SEMrush in order to gather some data. And these are some of the findings that they have as far as how Google reviews may affect your ranking or may affect your local search engine optimization. And I won't go into kind of the algorithm logic and things like that that go behind local SEO. I just want to point out some of these pretty interesting statistics. So you look at this and you have average rating, and this is the average rating of position and how many, like what is the star rating, or what is it out of 5 stars. And you can see here that the average in this case is actually around 4.1. So there's not like a super strong correlation of saying position 1, 2, and 3, they all have, have to have incremental higher reviews. But there is obviously a correlation where saying that anybody that's in those top 3 positions is at least above a 4-star rating. Okay. And then this one is the one that kind of shows the preference that Google gives to having a lot of good reviews. And in this case, this is the number of reviews here, and you can see that there is a scale that slides down with the number of reviews versus the first position, the second position, and the third position. And then you have the wild card, which is all the other positions combined. And you'll notice that, like, if you go into the Google My Business section or the map section and you click on that, where you see all the various businesses, you'll see that most of the time, the ones that show up first have a lot of reviews. Now, that doesn't mean that as you go further down in that list that you're not going to see ones that have a lot of reviews. That is the case. But you can see that there is definitely a preference that's given to those that have a lot of good positive reviews within Google. So with that all being said, that just lays the foundation of Google reviews are important. They add legitimacy to your company, and they're obviously going to affect how your company is seen online and how well it's pulled up. So how do we go out and how do we get those? And that's what we'll be talking about here. So it's time for the demo. But before I go in and show you guys, this is how you can generate review requests and things like that. I think it might be helpful to go through a couple terms. And the reason is at least in my past experience, I find when a marketing guy gets talking and things like that, they might start talking about KPIs or, ROAS or return on ad spend. And they might talk about these certain things and use terminology that most people may not be familiar with, or just have a vague understanding of. And what that does is that makes it look like, wow, this is super complicated, so it's above my head, when in reality it's not. It's just a difference of terms and how they're speaking. So let's go into a little bit of glossary terms here. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but I just think it's helpful. So when I'm going to mention some of these things as I'm going through the demo, first one is like emails and text templates. So your template is just simply that. It is a kind of outline that provides the messaging, and that's used in a situation where we can insert a template. A tag in the system is very similar to what you see on social media. Those are tags where it'll be, hashtag Stephen Small Business Seminar, or Stephen Small Business Weekly Workshop, I should say. So those type of things are tags. In Growth Genie 360, which is the software I'll be talking about, there are tags that you can put in there, and those tags have an association of information with a particular record. Okay. And then you have surveys. Surveys, they are a multi-step form, and they usually contain conditional logic. So what that is a form is something that you fill out. The multi-step is pretty explanatory, and conditional logic is, and I'll talk about that in workflows here, it's kind of an if-then. If this happens, then this will take place. So in the survey, they do have conditional logic to where when you choose something, then it will cause something else to happen. And the same thing happens when you're talking about workflows. Workflows are a little bit different in that they are system-wide. It's not just within a form. It's across the entire system is how workflows work, and they are, once again, conditional logic or more if-then statements. I'm going to talk a little bit about funnels. Funnels, they can also be used as, or you can swap it out with landing pages, lead magnets, that sort of thing. But in essence, it's a page that matches your branding, and that's for a specific purpose. And it usually will contain multiple steps. So it's like I go and I fill something out on this page, and then it takes me to another page that is going to give me more directions or something further down. The integrations are, when we're talking about Growth Genie 360, it's how Growth Genie 360 interacts with other platforms such as WooCommerce or QuickBooks or other things like that. And then artificial intelligence, or AI, that is, we'll just touch on it lightly, where you can use artificial intelligence to automatically reply to reviews. And so you'll see kind of what's going on there. All right, so it's time to jump over there. I'll share with you this tab and we'll get started. All right, so I'm in the reputation section. So on the left-hand side of Growth Genie 360 is where all of your menu navigation is found. And I've scrolled down here, and I'm now in the reputation section of that. And we'll go over what all of these particular tabs or pages are containing. The first one, as soon as it loads here, sorry, everything, I got quite a few things open, so it's dragging just a little bit. But it's the overview. So in the overview, we do have a, it'll show you, this is the overall statistics of what's been going on with review requests. So it's kind of like your dashboard for reviews. And it'll show you average ratings and, review requests, what those reviews look like, that sort of thing. Then we get into requests. Requests is quite simply the review requests that have been sent out, and it shows you who sent them out, when they were sent out, and that sort of thing. Then we get into the actual reviews themselves. So this is a conglomeration of the various channels that you have connected with Growth Genie 360. And in most cases, you'll have Google and Facebook connected, and this will give you that feed of these are all the various reviews. And this is where I had mentioned before the artificial intelligence comes in. So you can take and you can have AI generate something that will go back out, and you can actually, or go back out to the person that left that review, and you can actually have it done right here in the system. So if you like the way that this is, then you go ahead and send, and this was connected to Google, so it will automatically reply to this individual. Okay. Getting into the widgets. So the widgets, when we're looking at a widget, this is, I probably should have put that in the glossary because most people don't know what a widget is, but it's a bit of code that you can take and you can insert onto a website. Okay. And what this is this widget or this code is customizable. So you can put in here, I only want to see 5-star reviews, or I only want to see reviews from this particular channel, or I want it to look this way. And whatever directions we give to the system, it will create the design for that widget, and then we can take that bit of code and then insert it onto a website so that you can show your website or your reviews in your website or other channels. So anywhere that can accept code. So you can do this on social media pages, you can do this on other things as well. So that's what your widget is. Then we get into listings. And your listings is Growth Genie 360 has a partnership with Yext, and Yext is a company that has they go out and they scan the internet and they say, all right, here's all the various channels that you can have your information on. So like you can see here, Apple, Yelp, Bing, Yahoo, Foursquare, etc. And you're going to have information that's on those as well as reviews that are on those. And Yext's job is to take that information and make sure that it's the same across all channels. And it helps in local search engine optimization, but this is also how it can scan for reviews and pull those up as well. And so this is just a bit of information about how it's seen across the internet. Then we're going to jump into settings here. And by the way, if there are questions and things like that, you can feel free to type those in, maybe put a Q in front of it, and then I'll try to get to any of those at the end when we have a chance for that. Okay. All right. So in settings. So when we're talking about settings, you can utilize, this is for the reviews and the responses to the reviews. You can either have it be fully automated, or you can have it be suggestive, where Growth Genie will give you a suggestion and say, well, maybe you should say this, and you can either accept that, send it off, modify it, or what have you. If you're afraid of, AI being, saying something that it shouldn't, then you can always use that suggestive setting. But here is where we put in the links. So this is where we have our request for review, but what are we trying to get reviews on? What channel is it that we want to get those reviews on? That's what this is all about. So we have Google reviews, and we have Facebook reviews, and then we have custom link. And I'm going to talk about this custom link because this is the way that you can get pretty much any of those other channels and get reviews on them. So if you're a realtor and you want to have yours on Zillow, you want to have, reviews on Zillow, or if you're a contractor and you want it to be on Houzz or that sort of thing, or a restaurant and you want it to be on Yelp, you can do that with this custom link, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But this, I'm going to move past that, and I'm going to jump back to that and talk a little bit about these templates. So this is your template for your email and for your text message. So if I go up at any time and I click on, you may have seen that before, where it's send a review request. When I click on this, it's going to say, well, who do you want to send it to? What's their contact name, phone number, email, and do you want to send a text message or an email? If it's just a quick interaction like that, so let's say that I'm a realtor and I'm talking to my client, we just sold the house, that sort of thing, and all is well, and they are a happy, client. And I'm talking to them saying, hey, it'd really be helpful if you could put this review out for me, maybe on Zillow, or maybe on Redfin or wherever. If you have that request, you can just go in here, look up that individual, and then send that request off. And it can go either email like this, and this is what it would look like. It would have, whatever we want it to say in there, and then they'd be able to send off that review request, or it can come in text message. And in text message, these are these little contact tokens, so it will automatically put their first name in there, and then it will send the link for them to review. And then it would go to whatever channel we have selected up here. So if it's Google, if it's Facebook, or in this case, it's custom link. So we're going to show you what that custom link looks like. And I'm going to jump over here. So when somebody clicks on one of those review requests from Lojo, it takes them to this experience page where they're going to say, hey, we're going to say, give us a overview of what your experience was with Lojo. So let's say that they were unhappy. If they were unhappy, this is part of that survey. So it's going to take them to the next step in the survey, which is fill out this information and, let me know how that went. When I go ahead and submit this, it's going to send that information back to Lojo so that we can process that internally. Okay. Let's say, and then they will, I'll touch. Let's say that they had a good experience. As soon as they have a good experience, they were happy with that, then they are going to be sent to a thank you page that's going to prompt them in order to leave a review on one of these particular channels. We've put other things in here too, where they can go ahead and schedule a meeting with someone if they want to talk about their experience and that sort of thing. Now, I should mention this idea of gating reviews, okay? So specifically, Google does not like, Google, Yelp, I mean, none of them like it, but when you gate a review, and what that means is that I went in and I'm only seeking out people that had a good positive experience, and I'm not giving the people that have a negative experience any chance in order to leave a review. So within this system, there are opportunities for them to be able to do that. So I'm going to actually jump back here, and I may have to go back through the whole system, or I could just explain it to you here since I'm running a little bit short on time. So there is a small link that is put down in here in the process if they had somewhat of a negative experience and they went ahead and they've submitted that form. As soon as they've submitted the form, then there's a small bit of text that comes up where they can have the opportunity to leave a review on one of those channels. And it's just something that's in there, but it's low lighted so that we're encouraging them to give us feedback so that we can go ahead and correct any, things that need to be corrected. Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation here at this point, and we're going to talk about timing. Okay. So when's the best time to reach out for a review? I would say after a positive step in the buying process. So anytime that they've had a positive interaction with your company would be an appropriate time to do that. I see a comment that came in of right away, and that is something that if it's timely and it's during a time that that they've had a good experience, that's a good time in order to reach out. Okay, the question is, can we automate that outreach? And the answer is, of course, yes, we can. So there's not a ton of time that I have to go through this, and this is where you really get into the nuts and bolts of Growth Genie 360. It has a lot of power, and it has a lot of functionalities and things like that that can integrate with other systems. So just as an example, I'm going to show you this real quick. So this is a WooCommerce store that's built on WordPress. Okay. So in this product, so this happens to be a Thanksgiving pecan pie. Okay. In this product information, there's been an integration that's happened with Growth Genie to where when you put in here a tag, I can put in here like, product sold. And then after this is purchased, so this tag is entered in upon successful purchase. Okay. So once that product has been purchased, that tag will then automatically show up in Growth Genie 360. And once it's shown up in Growth Genie 360, it goes into one of these workflows. So you can see this over here. This is an example of the visual workflow editor in Growth Genie 360. Once that contact tag has purchased product, it'll go ahead, enter a note in the system. It will wait 3 days, and then it will send out an email. And then it'll wait a few minutes and send out a text reminder saying, hey, I sent an email for you to go ahead and review that product and let us know what you think. And then it'll continue on. And if somebody replies to that, then the system will stop its outreach and it will take steps according to whatever that action is. And that's where it gets a little bit involved in how these workflows are set up. But that's the beauty of Growth Genie 360 is there are templates and there are pre-built workflows that have this type of functionality in them. And they need just a little bit of customization in order to be implemented and engage in your business. And the same idea works with like a QuickBooks integration. So let's say that you send out a final invoice for your service, then the same thing can happen where something is triggered and then a review request goes out. And I know this isn't part of it, but I should mention that above and beyond just review requests, there's a lot of other things the system can do too, as far as follow up with that individual when maybe it's a product that needs attention like every other year or something like that. Like maybe let's say you're an HVAC person and you put in your invoice for your service call. Then in 6 months, when it's the season is changing or whatever, the system will automatically be queued up and send out a reminder for that individual. So there's a lot of other things that you can do with workflows other than just sending out a review request. So that gives you a little bit of an insight on how that whole system operates. And now we'll jump into some questions here and see what we can see. All right. So I have here a question that says, should we reach out to people that have had bad reviews or people that have bad experiences? And the answer to that is absolutely. Pretty much any review that goes unanswered is probably not a good thing. And just think about it from a personal point of view. If you were looking at a review and you saw that, hey, you know what, your pizza was terrible and it was all soft or, that sort of thing, and the business owner didn't reply to that, then you would say, well, must be soft and, it must be, or soggy is what I should say, must be something that I don't want. Or if you see that the business owner replied and said, well, actually, you ordered that pizza and you didn't come pick it up for 2 hours, after it was ordered, and we apologize for that experience. Is there something we can do? Then you have context to it and you know that, oh, well, these people didn't come pick it up. Of course it's going to be soggy, of course it's not going to be hot or whatever. So that's the power of replying to reviews, is it just gives people context of what that situation was. Yeah. We have a couple other things in here. So once again, the system, can it create emails for reviews upon request? So yeah, the system can be automated in multiple different ways, and that's going to depend on what it's really going to depend on what it is you're trying to accomplish, whether you're trying to reach out within your cycle. And that is one thing that I failed to show. Within Growth Genie 360, there is a sales pipeline, and there's different stages within that pipeline. And as soon as somebody moves to a different stage in the pipeline, it can automatically trigger that review request. So the system is set up to be able to work within itself, within that sales channel, to sell the product or sell the service, as well as reach out for that review. Okay. And then let's see, is it better text or email review requests? We've found that email is something that is kind of hit and miss, where they do reply if they've had a really good experience, but text message, it goes right to them, and there's a much higher reply rate and that sort of thing with text messaging, because it's quite simple. You just click on the link and it takes you right over. And most of the time you're logged into one of those channels. Okay. All right. Well, we will, let's put in here's a little bit of homework. So we can't leave without giving you some homework for this week. And the homework for this week is kind of pay it forward. We all have small businesses, or we all know small businesses out there that can really benefit from reviews. So find one that you've had good experiences with and go ahead and leave that positive review. I'm not encouraging you to go out and leave that negative review if it's something that you've had problems with people. I take it up with them, on that level where they can do something about it. But if you have had a good experiences, leave that review so that others can go ahead and see what's going on with that business and how they've been able to service you, and it will help them. So that's your homework this week. And then next week. So let's talk about next week. Just a reminder, it will be on Wednesday, May 8th, and the time has changed from 8 o'clock Pacific to 9 o'clock Pacific. So we do have that time change, but we're excited to talk about Google Ads and return on investment, and specifically how Google Ads, how you can get in there and you can determine, should I have a return on my investment without even actually setting up a campaign and spending money. I shouldn't say setting up a campaign. You do have to do some of that, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works. But without even spending a dime, you can still get that good idea of, is this something that is going to be beneficial for my company? And we will be excited to talk about that. So I'm going to sign off for now, and thank you all for your participating, and we'll look forward to chatting with you next week.